SIP should be live.
Okay, thank you, Karina. Thank you, members, officers. Welcome to our meeting of the Staffing Matters and Review Subcommittee. There are 4 items on the agenda for us to get through this evening. This is a meeting, a remote meeting that is being streamed live onto the Council's YouTube channel. We are not in control of the live YouTube comment section, so if you are using that, please do be considerate of others. We'll kick off with the first agenda item, which is apologies for absence. We are a full house of members this evening, so we'll move on to agenda item 2, which are declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare an interest at this point? Councillor Smith.
With regards to Essex County Council, me being a member, and the proposal to create a new service committee.
Okay, makes sense. Any other member wish to declare an interest?
Likewise, I'm a county member.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. There are no other members indicating, so there are no other further declarations of interest, in which case we move to agenda item 3, which are the minutes of our previous meeting that were held on the 18th of August. Are there any matters arising from members with regards to the minutes of the meeting? No member is indicating, in which case if I can ask you to unmute yourselves, members, so that we can record a vote of the minutes. And can I ask Councillor Smith, how do you vote?
In favour.
Councillor Baggott?
In favour.
Councillor Headley?
Agreed.
And I vote in favour, so the minutes are carried. Thank you, members. Agenda item 4 are the meetings of full council and council committees and allocation of seats to political groups. I will ask Paul to introduce this report in a moment, but just for members' attention, there is a slight error on my part on page 7, which relates to the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee there. It says Councillor Ansell, it should say Councillor Fellows on page 7. So that's a slight amend to the report, and that was a mistake by myself. Paul, do you want to introduce the report and then we'll open this up for a debate?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I think the a report that covers a few issues. The context, I think, to a degree, take back to the meeting of the Staffing Matters Subcommittee, I think back in April, the 28th of April, and this committee kind of agreed a response to the way forward on committee meetings in light of the COVID pandemic and the government restrictions. And part of that was consideration of the position, I suppose, around the annual council meeting, but also, it kicks off really, and the same applies to full council meetings. And it was hoped at that time that it would be possible to convene a meeting in the council offices, and a date for their annual council meeting was set on the 24th of September. But with the ongoing government restrictions, it was apparent, and I think that couldn't take place as a result of those. The issue of the committees, I think it's fair to say, further to the debate by this subcommittee and the protocol and procedure rules that were put in place, I think a little settling in, but I think that was a little settling in. I think it's fair to say that the committees and subcommittees have all conducted business well remotely and continue to do so, and so that has been a positive. But there's always been the issue in the background around the absence of full council meetings and the annual council meetings, and there's a degree of context to that report. I'm asking for this subcommittee to revisit and reconsider the way forward with regards to full council meetings in light of the inability to hold them at the council offices. I think it's just finally on the council meetings before I go on to the other, I think as I've held discussions with all group leaders around this, and I think it's important that we try to come to some consensus and a position across group leaders as to what's the most appropriate. So them discussions have been ongoing for some time. It was a shared position, I think, around trying to hold an annual council meeting. I'm looking for a bit of a steer this evening from the subcommittee, and bearing in mind that 4 group leaders are part of this subcommittee, and obviously Councillor Headley as deputy leader of the Conservative group as well. So looking for a steer from group leaders as to how we take forward council meetings. I think it's fair to say that the longer this goes on, the more unsatisfactory it perhaps gets, and with things like the budget looming, there's a need to find a solution, as well as a number of other issues that may require full council consideration. So we'll come to that, and that's dealt with at the end of the report, and I'll come back to that shortly. But the report also seeks to deal with, in the absence of a council meeting, the council's duty to review the allocation of seats to political groups, and that's following Councillor Blake leaving the Conservative group and being a non-aligned councillor. So I need to fulfil that duty, and obviously, as is normal practice, the review of the allocation of seats has been done with the leader of the council, yourself, and you've taken the opportunity to put forward some proposals as part of that, and slight revisiting of the reallocation of seats. And obviously the opportunity exists this evening for any member and even yourself to make any amendments to that if those are felt fit. We also then in a position around the remits of committees and slight changes to them, I think, which you're keen to make as leader of the council. And I think that's just to give some clarity. I think it's fair to say that the only one that's actually changing remit is travel and transport, the proposal to move it from neighbourhoods and public spaces. I think all the other areas actually just seek to provide clarity and would have gone to them committees anyway. But obviously those are issues that you wish to see reflected more clearly in the remit of committees, and we seek to deal with that and tidy it up a little. As leader of the Labour group, you have given notice that you wish to change your membership on committees, and obviously this subcommittee has given me as a monitoring officer the authority to give effect to that. My apologies, an error on page 6 in which I've said that that's to take effect from the 21st of September. That should have read the 28th, and that's in accordance therefore with the recommendation. So I just make that minor amendment to the report. And the effect of some of those changes which you wish to make to the allocation of seats from your group onto committees has resulted in vacancies and issues around chairmanship and vice chairmanship. And this report seeks to deal with them at an early opportunity as opposed to leaving them vacant for, at the moment, a time that is not yet known in the absence of full council meetings, and we'll come back to that debate shortly. I think the other issue, in light of the pending white paper from government, which I think all members are members of the Policy and Resources Committee, all were present last week and were party to the debate that took place on the 16th of September, and the work that's now taking place across the county to look at local government reform and local government reorganisation in Essex. And therefore, perhaps, and certainly yourself as leader feels there's a need for the council to respond to that and have a committee in which can provide oversight and direction. I think it's fair to say that not necessarily discharging functions, but commissioning research in line with the funding that was referenced in that report and making recommendations as appropriate. I'd just conclude really, and perhaps might be worth, Chairman, actually just dealing with the report in general and then perhaps coming back to a debate around meetings of full council. I'm happy to provide a bit of an options appraisal on those that are set out on page 10. I think in fairness, members will be aware of some of the issues associated with each of those options, but perhaps better to contribute to that and feed into it a bit more when we get into that debate and hear what members have to say, rather than me spending that time going through it now. So introduction to the report. I think it's fair to say that the issue of full council meetings is one that needs to be addressed. I acknowledge that these matters, and I think all members would acknowledge that these matters would be more appropriately done at a full council meeting. I would normally be the case, but in the absence of that, there is a basis upon which to deal with all these issues to make sure that the council's in a position to move forward, as well as needing to address and try to get some clarity from group leaders on the future approach to full council meetings. But I will leave it there, Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I will bring members in a moment. I can see members indicating, and I will do that. I think the first thing to say is obviously this committee has conducted business in a very grown-up way, and in terms of how we've discharged functions. If you think back to where we were in April, where we were in March, the beginning of April, where it was a view that the council, this committee, would do an awful lot. We were very keen to actually get the committees up and running as quickly as we possibly could, so that decisions could be taken by those committees and their constituent members. Similarly, I think, as you've said, Paul, in an ideal world, we would have full council meetings and we would be able to go forward with full council meetings. But every group leader has felt it better for those meetings to take place in person, and for either this committee or for P&R to look at various different aspects of what's coming forward. There are two key things that are pressing. One is the issue around COVID and what is external affairs, but taking on economic development and recovery is seeking to do is incorporate a lot of that COVID work that the working group we set up. And I said back when we did set up that working group that we would be looking at how we can incorporate that into the service committees. That committee will take forward that work, and that is becoming more pressing, as we've seen today with the changes that have come in, which are for 6 months when it comes to some of the hospitality sector, which obviously we have a fair chunk of in our borough, and our high streets, etc., are reliant on a lot of that. So that has become quite pressing, and clearly, as Paul has alluded to there, we had a full presentation last week on the issues around the county council and the speed at which they are pursuing LGR, and the need for this council to be on the front foot in terms of getting its ducks lined up in a row on research and commissioning that research, which is the purpose of creating that committee for local government reorganisation and transition. I'm keen that we do this in two parts, really, as has been alluded to. If we deal with the issue of the committees, if we deal with the issue of the remits, and then we will deal with the issue of full council meetings more generally. So if we can speak to those two things separately, we'll come back to talk about the full councils. Councillor Baggott, you had indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Hear what you say about discussing them separately, but in fact they are conjoined. So I am going to be referring to the second item, albeit not in any great depth. I think this report is unfortunate in a number of areas. I think it's unfortunate that it hasn't been produced in the timing that one would expect for a report to be able to go out to the public. The agenda, there's only one item on the agenda, which is this, and it didn't come out till Friday. We're now at Wednesday. That's not within the timescales that are laid out for a report to be produced. It is, in fact, an order paper by stealth, put in through the back door to a committee of 4 people rather than a full council. And that's shameful. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. What you're doing is, in the lack of the ability to produce a council meeting, you are trying to drive a steam train through the Constitution, and it's unacceptable, to be frank. I am proposing that the recommendation is amended, and that it's recommended that the items are deferred to an emergency meeting of full council to be convened as soon as possible, because that's democracy. And what we're seeing within this council at every single level is a complete dismantling of democracy under the guise of using COVID as an excuse, and it's shameful. I spoke to Mr. Birkinshaw about this, and you're absolutely right. There was a move by leaders and a thought by leaders that the best and most effective way would be for council to meet in full. But if we're going to start drip feeding through to this committee important constitutional and democratic issues and get them done on the nod with the leader and the deputy leader of the council, that is a complete abrogation of responsibility, and we won't sign up to that. There is the ability for the council to meet at the town gate. We've had meetings at the sporting village. There's the ability to social distance and have the appropriate distance at both of those places because the venues are large enough. And the idea that people might not hear, well, in the days of microphones and technology, that just doesn't fly. So I think this is a undemocratic process, an undemocratic report, and it's a shame that it's actually come to this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Just to respond to a couple of those points, I mean, I understand why your tune has changed from where you were previously. You have your first Conservative group meeting for a while last night. The knives come out, the bloodbath ensues, and therefore you all have to come here tonight and stand up and play politics. We've had a group meeting every single Monday, Councillor, every single Monday throughout this, bar one. So I don't know where you get your information on, it's wrong. And the meeting we had yesterday was actually one of the more convivial meetings we've had.
So if at the risk of you playing politics, I would suggest you actually, if you're going to get information from people, you find another source.
Okay. Well, it's good to know that there have been less than convivial in the previous weeks, but nonetheless, I understand why you have to come here tonight and play politics, despite your position, which has for the last 6 months been that actually Staffing Matters and not even P&R should take care of the business of the council. Now, of course, you want the issue of full councils to look at everything. I will come to your amendment as well, which I know is on the table in a moment. You've raised a number of points there in terms of could we be moving towards the town gate, the sporting village? And I do think we need to explore those options for full council. I think we need to explore those options, particularly around the budget setting. The government rule of 6 makes things obviously difficult, depending on interpretation, depending on how you put it forward. If there was to be a local lockdown, then shielding comes back into play. We heard that today from the Prime Minister in the Commons. And so we need to be aware that we would potentially be disenfranchising members of the council from taking part in different areas of our democracy. And the reality is that we are coming up to the 6-month point of this municipal year. The government, your government, has passed legislation to say that AGMs are not required. We have taken a decision as administration all throughout this that in the best will in the world we'd want an AGM, but it hasn't been possible. But the business of the council cannot wait. And therefore, given what we know about LGR, given what we know about COVID, we are seeking to make 2 minor changes to the way in which this council operates. The remits of the councils the remits of the committees have not drastically changed. In fact, they've changed by barely anything at all. 99.9% is exactly the same. The only thing that changes really is that the LGR committee is established for reasons that were set out back at P&R just last week. So I absolutely take the point on board in terms of the town gate and the sporting village, particularly when we come to the budget. But of course, this is not any attempt to stifle democracy. The reality is what we're seeking to do here is we are seeking to enhance democracy in the decision-making process, particularly around LGR, so that decisions are not being taken, dare I say it, by middle-aged white men sitting in a room, but they're actually being taken in a public forum where the public can watch those decisions about LGR. They can see the scrutiny that is being placed on officers and those people who are helping us move forward on LGR. And we are seeking to open up the council in a more transparent way on those major decisions around COVID and LGR, which I thought Conservative councillors would probably be in favour of. But again, I understand with everything that goes on in your group that you have to come here and play politics. Do I have any other members wishing to speak on the amendment, first of all? Do you have a seconder for your amendment?
Yeah, I'm happy to second the amendment. Can I just say that I think we need a more pragmatic approach to how we conduct business going forward. The situation with COVID is such that I believe we have to explore the opportunities of having remote meetings of the council. County have managed it quite successfully, and they had over 120 participants in the full county council meeting, and it went rather smoothly. In respect of what goes on in group meetings, I have to say that with due respect to the leader of the council, I don't believe you were at the meeting, and certainly as described is not the meeting I was at. I've never been at a Conservative group meeting that's been anything other than cordial, where everybody's had the opportunity to speak. As in all political groups, there's all shades of opinion. But as far as I'm aware, we're consistently together on all of our policies. So I'm happy to support my leader on his amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. Even more impressive that you said all of that with a straight face as well. But nonetheless, we will move to the vote on the amendment, which is to defer all of the items to an emergency full council as soon as possible. I will kick things off and vote against. If I can ask members to unmute themselves. Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Baggott.
Democracy in Action, for.
Councillor Headley.
For.
I cast my casting vote against. So the amendment has fallen. Do I have any other member wish to speak on the substantive? Councillor Smith, you had indicated.
Yes, I mean, very glad you brought Town to an end completely. Sort that out so it can focus on creating outside of the brewery industry. That's a good thing. I like the idea of the local as Essex County Council, various many pieces. How that will look, we do not know. But what we do know, that there's an 88-year backlog. While we wait for local government reform, my concern is repair budget and splash it round the north and the posh parts of Essex, leaving our
Councillor Smith, I think you're breaking up slightly. Is anyone else getting that?
No, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not even hearing every other word.
Yeah, I
Not
think
really
the connection's breaking up slightly.
Everything I've heard was perfect.
Was it? Okay, very good. Do you want to come a bit closer, Kerry? And maybe that might help.
it keeps flashing up the internet connection's unstable. Is that
Yeah, I think we might have an issue with your connection there.
okay? But if I just wrap up, I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty good. But if my internet connection's failing here, it's going to be a fun-filled council if we'd have gone with the vote down amendment. But I wonder what the internet connection's like in Dorset at this minute.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I have no other members wishing to speak on the recommendation. So what I'll do is I'll take these recommendations, we'll vote, and then as I'll come to you, Councillor, in a moment, Councillor Harrison. And what we'll then do, as we've done previously on these staffing matters, if we can just hang fire at the end as well, we will have a closed session discussion as well. Councillor Harrison, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say, first of all, on the recommendations, I haven't got a problem with these recommendations as they stand. I think the fact the council has been working very well, and my committee's been functioning very well. It's been most things have been unanimous, and it's been a very open committee. I think we need to make certain changes, as you've outlined, because of local government reform, etc. But when we come to the next item, I'm going to partially agree with Councillor Baggott, because I think it's essential that we start planning now for the budget meeting, because there's no way I would support a budget meeting when all 42 councillors haven't got a say. Thank you.
Yeah, again, I think all members are in agreement, and if, you know, God willing, we would be in a position even in December at full council to have a full council meeting, we'd want to have one. I don't think there's any, maybe officers think differently, but I don't think there's any member who doesn't want to have a full council meeting. We want to crack on with that, and we do need to ensure we make it work. We also need to make sure, though, that whichever format we use, the behaviours of members are up to the standards that we would expect, and that, you know, serious accusations that are unfounded are not being made on forums such as this, that are when it comes to COVID and the response of the council, etc. So we need to make sure, and as group leaders and group leaders are on this call, that we ensure that the behaviours in whichever forum we choose to go down are exemplary, because that will obviously impact on the reputation of the council and our ability to conduct the democracy or to conduct decision making in a democratic way. I'm going to come to the recommendations as they're set out on page 4 of the report, recommendations 1 to 7 on block. If I can ask members to unmute themselves. Councillor Smith, how do you vote?
In favour.
Councillor Baggott.
Against.
Councillor Headley.
Against.
And I vote in favour, and I use my casting vote in favour. So the recommendations are carried. Thank you to members. Thank you, Karina. If we can thank those members of the public who are watching, and just ask members and officers to hang fire for a moment, and we'll end the live streaming at this moment in time. Thank you, Karina.